good morning. Thank you for being here and watching us. My name's Millie Hind. I'm a PhD researcher with the Centre for Care, and I'm here talking to Patricia Chinyoka, who is the founder of Women of Zimbabwe. I'm lucky enough to be working with Patricia, or will be working with Patricia for my PhD research, and I'm excited to have her share a little bit about what she does. Patricia, thank you for being here. It's great to talk to you and to be able to use this event to highlight your work and talk a little bit about the challenges that are faced particularly by migrant workers.
And it's an absolute delight to be part of this. So as you've already introduced me, Patricia Chinyoka, founder of Women of Zimbabwe, which started a couple of years ago. So very happy to be working with yourself on this, and hoping that the work would also upscale what we do. So thank you.
Great. Well, maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about Women of Zimbabwe. How did the organization come about?
A couple of years ago, a mom reached out to me. She was in despair as she was trying to bring her two children. In fact, she has three children, and she'd already brought one child, and she had two boys that remained in Zimbabwe. And when she came to me, I was a bit clueless as to how she should do what she should do. And I reached out to a lawyer to ask, and he sort of gave me some pointers on what we could do, because lawyers are very expensive. And so I took on board the advice that he gave me, and decided that I was going to support this mom with, I guess, signposting her to services, signposting her to the information that I'd found out on gov.uk around sole responsibility. And so that's how this project was born, from that mom, the one mom. And then I sort of helped, and I reached out to a couple of organizations, and that's how we got started in 2023. And we're here 2 years and a bit later, and we've grown in scale and in amount of women that we are supporting, and also delighted that we've also got some single dads that we are working with.
Great. Yeah, it's a short time to have grown so much and to have been doing so much to hopefully support women and now men going through the process. Just give a bit of a context for the kind of wider situation. These women and men are working in care in the UK and came before changes to the policy in March last year. So the health and care worker visa, which is now again perhaps being abolished, but that's to be seen whether that comes to fruition. But in March last year, a change was made so that care workers no longer had the right to bring dependents with them to the UK. But the community that Patricia has been working with specifically, are people who arrived before that, so did have the right to bring dependents according to their visas, which is why it's even more frustrating. I mean, it should still be a right for those people to bring dependents, but for people coming after the change. But it's so frustrating because that was what they were expecting to be able to do, which is really awful to see people having to go through such complicated procedures. Women of Zimbabwe launched a report in January this year after doing some study with Action for Southern Africa. Was that right?
Yes.
Could you tell us a bit about the study that you were doing, why it was important?
I think the study was really important for us because we wanted to highlight the experiences that the moms were going through. And we wanted to bring this the findings from the report to the attention of the Home Office, but also to other key stakeholders that might find the information useful. We spoke to moms, we spoke to about 12 moms as part of that research. I mean, there were more moms involved, but there were very specific stories that we wanted to get out to the media, to the Home Office, and that was really important for us. And to use that information to get the Home Office or government to change the way in which they treat the visa applicants, or the way in which that the process works, that is quite difficult for the moms, or quite a challenge for the moms to enable them to bring their children to the UK. And as part of that report, we had 7 recommendations that we put forward to government to make sure that, you know, we had something tangible that we could go back on after hearing the experiences of those moms. And some of those experiences were quite harrowing. And so we use that report, I guess, as a tool to hold government accountable. So that was one really important key outcome. And then the next one was that we would use it to engage them and to have meetings with the Home Office, which we did very successfully. We had a meeting with the Minister for Home Affairs. We also had a meeting with some of the family policy colleagues from the Home Office. And in addition, we wanted the attention of the operations department of the Home Office, who are the team that process the visa applications. And so that's why it was important for us to do that report. But I think the key importance was the stories of the women that they were out there. And, you know, the Guardian were very kind enough to do a story on that. And we're hoping that we'll have a follow up of another story in a different paper in the next couple of months, to continue from where we left and to give an update of the work that we've been doing over the last 1.5 years.
Yeah, I think that's what's really striking about the report is the personal stories and feeling the emotion that these women have gone through in such a difficult process with the not just the waiting, but also the unclearness of the process and the complicated bureaucracy part of it. So I think it's really good that those stories were shared, because I think you do feel a little bit of what they had experienced or are still experiencing. So it's a powerful read.
Yes, it is. And also, I think, you know, the emotional aspect, the trauma that
Mm.
the children go through that are left behind, and those children are left with elderly parents or grandparents. They are left with friends, with nannies, and sometimes they have to move from, you know, where they were living with their mom. They have to move, and, you know, some of those children have been moved to villages where there's no electricity, no running water, from living in a middle class environment in a city to suddenly ending up in a village is quite traumatizing. Some of those children drop out of school as a result because of the you know, the movement, and it just traumatizes the children, and then they don't perform well when they are in school, and then they don't understand why they can't be with their mom, because this is the person they've known all their life, and then suddenly there's this separation. And some have been separated since the parents arrived in the country. So if the mom arrived in 2022, for example, they're still separated up to now. 3 years later, they're separated. And there's a story of a mom whose child moved countries 3 times. So they lived in South Africa. She brought the child to Zimbabwe, then took the child back to South Africa, then brought the child back, and now the child is back in South Africa, living with a single uncle who's never had children before. So those are some of the harrowing stories that are coming out, and we felt that they needed to be heard. In addition to a host of other issues, such as the financial aspect. And so the mom is here having to pay rent, and, you know, they've taken a whole house because they're expecting a child or children. and the home office will expect each child to have their own separate bedroom. So they're having to meet all those financial requirements for themselves. And then they also have to do that for the child or children in that country. They have to pay for the food, for the fees. And so it's another big challenge that the parents are having to face.
Yeah, I think it's really important to think about the impact on the families and the impact on those children who are waiting, not sure why processes are being dragged out. Yeah. Um, what role do you think, because most of the people that you are working with are women, and it has been single mothers who have had the difficulties bringing their children to the UK. What do you think is the impact of gender on the situation, on what is happening? Do you think it is a reason or a way to explain what is happening?
I think I could say there is some form of discrimination um, against single mothers, particularly. Because when a married woman or a woman in a relationship with children bearing the same surname as the father apply at the same time, they get their visas straight away. So there is some form of discrimination that is happening in the process, that seeks to, or I assume punishes the single moms for being single. So these are women who've either divorced or were cohabiting, or some of the women just had a one night stand. So we have a story of a woman who had a one night stand and found out that she was pregnant. She doesn't even know where the man is. But then, because of the culture in Zimbabwe, particularly, the women want the children to bear their surnames of their fathers. And there was a time when the birth certificates, so the rules around the birth certificate, were such that you had to go to the birth certificate to get it with the father of the child. And so all those complications um, led to the situation that the women find themselves in. And so it almost feels as if they're now having to pay a price for having used the surnames of the fathers, of the biological fathers of their children. For moms who use their own surnames, there's no problem. So you're a single mom and you've got your surname on your child's birth certificate. There's no issues. And so this is one area that we want to explore with the Home Office. We've already put the question to them. Why is it so difficult and challenging when a single mom uses the surname of the biological father of her child? And one of the things that they argue is that the mother doesn't have sole responsibility because the child bears the surname of the father, which is wrong because the fathers have gone, and most of them are married or they're in new relationships and they have new families, and they're not in contact in most cases with the moms, nor are they in contact with their children that they've left behind.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a punishment for not having that traditional relationship, not having that particular family setup, which is really, really unjust. It reminds me a little bit of the concept that you use in your reports of cultural illiteracy,
Yes, that is
because
it.
talking about the way that in Zimbabwean society the expectation or the preference is to have the father's surname on the birth certificate, um, means that it's very likely that they will have that surname, but then the Home Office isn't understanding or taking into account or paying attention to that cultural norm.
No, they're not. And I think one of the things that we asked in our meeting with the minister was that we wanted Women of Zimbabwe to be part and parcel of the review of the policies, because the Home Office are currently reviewing their policies, and we need to chase them on that so that we can note that cultural sensitivity and to see how they're being trained, because it's important that they understand the different cultures, and why it's important for some African cultures children to bear the surnames of their fathers. There's also another challenge that we are beginning to see again. This is where a mom has remarried, has children with the new marriage. So those children can come, that's no problem, but it is her children from a previous relationship, and in which the Home Office again argue on the point of lack of sole responsibility. And so they treat those moms as they treat the single moms. And we're just waiting on the dads because we've started working with dads and they're applying for their children to come. So we don't, that's a new challenge that we want to see how the Home Office is going to treat those single dads who've remarried but now want their children to come and join them because they have sole responsibility for those children. So it's going to be interesting to see the outcomes for those single dads.
Yes, definitely, because it will be interesting to see if it follows the same pattern that it has with the single mums,
Yes.
or if it's maybe because of the same surname, there might be an understanding there. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how that progresses. Having spoken to the dads that you've started to work with, have you got any um, initial thoughts about what the barriers have been or what the struggles have been for them?
I think the barriers are the moms. So, their previous wives or girlfriends that they had children with, they've relinquished custody to the fathers. So which is good because that's what the Home Office want to see. They want to see the custody document. But then the sole responsibility, I think there's going to be a big argument around the fathers having the sole responsibility. So this is how they are raising their children, and the children are left with the grandmother, so the paternal grandmother, caring for those children. So that's probably where the challenge might be with the Home Office, that they might argue that again it's going to be a bit discriminatory, I think, because they'll argue that a father cannot have sole responsibility. We don't know. It's going to be a new territory for us to see what the response of the Home Office will be. And as you rightly said, it is the moms and the dads whose children, or who came before 11 March 2024. And so that's a year ago, isn't it? It's 1 year, and they're still denying them the visas, when they shouldn't really, because they have the right, they are eligible to bring their children. And some go as far back as 2022. Some have had up to 5 refusals. And so it's unacceptable. And then when they've given them the
It
five
is completely.
refusals, yeah, they then turn around, the Home Office will then turn around and say, well, you've been here since 2022, the children can remain there. And then they forget that actually you've been refusing me since 2022, so I can't bring the children because you've been refusing me for the last 2.5 years.
And it almost becomes a reason to not permit the child to come, because they have, in the wait, they have been put with a different relative or neighbor, friend, and it becomes the evidence, which is really horrible, really, because it makes you wonder, are you making me wait on purpose so that
Yeah,
you have a reason to say no? It's really, yeah, it's like a cycle then for those
it's a
particular
cycle.
cases.
Yeah. So they just go round
Yeah.
and round and round and round in that cycle, which is I mean, again, I talked about trauma, which is quite
Mm.
traumatizing to the moms. We've had moms that have gone back home because they can't cope with the separation, and so they've lost their job, they've lost their visas, and coming here costs money. Some of them have sold their property to come here, so they've gone back with nothing, and they're rebuilding again. So there are a lot of challenges, that
Gosh, of
they're
course.
going through.
Yeah, because I imagine that some some of them come to the point where they say, well, if there's not going to be a solution here,
Yeah.
I have to make those big decisions. But again, it's
Yes.
not a simple process. Moving abroad, even if it's back to where your family are based, back to where you have
Mm.
community, it's still a long and complicated process. Yeah. And then after so long being separated from children, I can imagine the relationships change, and there needs to be a building of trust again. And yeah, really. Okay, so I think that's really, talking, going back to what you said about the dads. I think really interesting to think about that discrimination based on gender, because it's also
Yes.
working almost in the reverse, in that men who have responsibility for their children, but the expectation is that a woman does it. So they are
Yes.
taken, they are judged, or they're said to not be the appropriate carer, not to be the preference, and the fact that it's their mothers, so the child's paternal grandmother in some cases. Yeah, it will be interesting to see what the responses are to those processes. So hopefully there will be solutions, but it's very
Yeah.
hard to think of
It
how it
should
will
be
be.
easy. I mean, if someone meets the criteria for the sole responsibility as per the Home Office guidance, which is quite clear, but it's the process which is, because all of these mums have demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt that they have the sole responsibility for the children. They've gone over and above what is required by the Home Office, and the Home Office will always come back and with a reason. And one of their favorite opening line is that this is self-serving. You're doing this because you want your children to come, and and you think, how is it self-serving when I was living with my child or children in my home country? I just want them to come, and so they make it very difficult. And with the latest rhetoric on immigration, one wonders whether there's been a change in the tone. I mean, there's been a change in the tone of the current government from when we met them and some of the promises that they made to where they are today. There's been a change in that tone. It almost feels as if they are back to the previous government's very strong tone against migration, and these moms are being punished because when you look at the data on migration, it says that there was a huge jump because of um, the skilled worker visa, and the thousands of people that came into the country. But there's only a few people left now to come, so that those that were pre 11 March 2024, I don't think that it's more than 2,000. It can't be more than 2,000 because we've got women in our groups, but then there are other groups outside of our group where some of these mums and a few dads are. It's less than 2,000. So they could just deal with these applications and just resolve them.
I think it's really important that you've brought in the current climate into the conversation, because it has been very scary to hear the conversations, the tone of
Mm.
public opinion, and it's been scary and upsetting. So I can imagine that members of your community have felt that, of your organisation have felt that. And it's very, I think, relevant what you say about how the tone of the government has felt like it's moved back almost. So they
Mm.
go in one direction and then they go back again, which yeah, it's quite disheartening to hear.
Yeah, it's very frightening for a lot of the migrants that have come in, and some are planning to leave, packing their bags and going. There's a lot of movement to Australia, New Zealand. So people are looking for jobs, and people are leaving the UK because they don't feel safe at the moment. And so we're probably going to get back to, maybe in the next 1 year or so, we're going to go back to that situation where there'll be a need again for healthcare workers because they will have moved to other countries where they feel that there's better safety, and that where the rhetoric is probably more welcoming around migrants.
And that's so central as well, is that these people that have come on health and care worker visas have come because there is a need in the UK
Yes.
for people to work in those positions, which is what's so infuriating, that then many have received such horrible treatment and such a negative reception. So I think yeah, I hope that that's not something that is going to be long standing, but it's not feeling promising at the moment, which
So
is very
feeling
sad.
close. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And we know that this,
Uh,
yeah.
no, what? Sorry, what were you going
Sorry,
to
no, I was
say?
just going to
Interrupt.
say that we know that these types of jobs are long hours,
Mm,
low pay, and so they have to work very long hours to make a good
yeah,
wage at the end of the month. And it's a sector that really needs support, and they've come to do that. So we hope that with the interactions that we have with the Home Office, that they'll be open and honest with us and tell us that they've shifted, but also tell us what it is that they can do to make sure that those that are here feel that they are wanted and that they are
that's right.
valued and appreciated for their contribution that they are making to the UK society.
That's right. Yeah, and that's so important to value that contribution, because it's it's unavoidable that people need to be cared for,
Yeah,
and having those people provide care at people's most vulnerable times, in older age, uh, or in illness, in changing health. It's so important to value the care that we receive, which is why I think it's so contradictory that
yeah,
those people aren't allowed uh, things that would help them care for themselves and care for their families. Yeah, it really sticks with me what you said about the line of response about how applications for dependents to come is self-serving, because
yeah,
it seems a completely unreasonable thing to say, but I can fully picture the letter or the email, or however the information gets sent, saying, "Oh no, this is just your preference. It's not important," which is it just demonstrates how much of a lack of understanding and a lack of um, literacy into the minds of these people. Yeah, it's shocking,
yes, and
shocking, but also not surprising.
we played it back to the Home Office. So we did some cutouts in confidence to just for them to read. And they were surprised. So the family policy unit that we met with, who write the policies, were quite surprised by the responses, because that's their standard, that's their first opening line, and then they go on into detail, and it's all about arguing against the evidence that the applicants have provided, which is quite sad. Um, but I
Really
think we
sad.
need to just continue with the advocacy to make sure that every mom and dad who wants their child here brings their child here, who has sole
Mm-hmm.
responsibility and custody of their children are able to bring them.
That's right. That's right.
The
What do
other
you
angle,
think? Yes.
sorry,
No,
yeah,
go
the
ahead. Go
other
ahead.
angle is the children that turn 18 in the process of applications. And so the process starts, and then the children eventually, some of them turn 18. And then when they turn 18, the Home Office would then turn around and say, well, they're now an adult, we can't, unfortunately. But they've left it that long, and then they've gone on and on, um, until that child turns 18. So we've got a lot of children that have turned 18, and I'm working with ACTSA on that, to bring it to the attention of the Home Office to say these children were nowhere near 18 when the process started. So it all depends when the parents were offered a job. So mom was offered a job on whatever month, year, and then they started the process of applying for the children for the visas, but the refusals were so many, or that the Home Office took their time in processing the visa, and then the children turned 18. And so I think there needs to be something done about that by the Home Office, to ensure that those children can come, whether they're 18 or 19, because they were the reason why those children couldn't come within the time frame of when they should have come.
That's exactly right, and it's another example of how the the long process, or the waiting periods, have caused
Yeah,
the excuse for then not granting the visa, which is awful, because at 18 you still need to be with your family. You
you
still
you do.
You know, it's still
Yes.
so important to have that opportunity. And yeah, especially if you've been planning it since you were 14, 15, 16. Yeah, no, it's really really important that you're now working with those specific cases. Yeah. How have you found working with Action for Southern Africa? Has it been a good experience to work with them?
Yes, it's been an amazing experience because they have a lot of experience of working with migrants. And so Action for Southern Africa works in, I think the majority of their work is based in South Africa. So they did a lot of the anti apartheid work. So it is from that that they've had this amazing experience. And, you know, they were part and parcel. We partnered on the report that you mentioned earlier. And so it's been a huge blessing to Women of Zimbabwe to work with Accent. We are continuing to work with them because they now have a campaign which is based on Women of Zimbabwe, so supporting the work that we do. And you know, they came to the launch of the report. They were part of the meeting with the Home Office, and we continue to partner to make sure that we have more voices to advocate for this work. We also have a couple of MPs that have come on board, and they are writing, so they are pushing from their side to push the Home Office. And we have Baroness Natalie Bennett, who was the one that organized the meeting with the Home Office and introduced us, and also Baroness Hamawi, who's also working and supporting the work of Women of Zimbabwe. And so we're very grateful for that, and I'm delighted to be working with AXA.
No, that's really good to hear about the the benefits of collaborating. I think that's really
Yes,
nice for both organizations to be um, benefiting from the strengths of the other, learning from the way that the two organizations work, and having more force behind you to push these important issues, and be able to then engage with hopefully decision makers, people that
yes,
can pressure from other perspectives. So I think that's really really good to hear.
yes,
Um,
and that's where AXA has been really helpful because they have a lot of links with MPs, so and lords, so they were able to bring in Lord Johnny Oates, who's amazing. He chairs the African Parliamentary Group. He himself lived in Zimbabwe, where he taught for a number of years. So there's that affinity. When we started out the project, we were just supporting Zimbabwe, who are the majority, so 85%. And then we've got the 15% of moms from Kenya, Ghana, Uganda, and Nigeria, and other countries who approach us as they need, and also South Africa. And so that's how we are growing in terms of the project. It's gaining popularity.
That's right, and that's really good to see. I mean,
Yeah.
it's sad on one hand that so many people are still facing these issues, but encouraging that an organization such as Women of Zimbabwe is there to support so many people. Um, in general, what do you think the importance of uh, community organizations, small organizations that have grown like yours, to improving things for particularly migrant communities?
So I think the importance, I think trust, if I talk about trust, one of the things I've learned about working with the community is that they often are very afraid, and usually it's afraid of fear of the unknown. Can they trust the organization? And can they trust the people that they're working with? Can they trust to tell their stories? Because these are very personal stories, and you get to hear a lot of very personal, confidential information. So I think building trust with those communities is important, and being the face for their issues or their concerns. And so the organization almost takes that challenge on their behalf to table it to government or to other organizations that will be able to hear them and help them. There's also the other aspect of the lawyers who can be quite expensive. And so when you work with organizations, small organizations such as ourselves, what we then do is reach out to other organizations or legal firms who can then support them, but on a very low fee basis. And so Women of Zimbabwe work with the associates, and the associates are the ones who draft their statements because they have to tell their story to the Home Office. Just completing the application without further information or some context means that they don't understand who you are, and usually they'll just decline it. And so the associates will do that for a very low fee. And then they'll also support them with writing support letters, and then the lawyers can write letters, but then that will be a reduced cost. And so this is how we come in, and then we can then link them to others within the community so that they have others that they can go to and talk to. And so the group gives them connections, and then they can talk among themselves. So it works really well because they can talk among themselves, they can learn, and then the very confident ones will just go ahead and do their own applications and do their own statements because they've learned from the group. And so we give them the knowledge, we run workshops for them. So it just makes it so much easier and simpler, and less expensive for the mums.
Yeah. No, I think that's really great. That um, knowing that you have somebody you can trust to support you, finding more people that have similar situations or similar experiences, I think is so important when you're going through something difficult, to feel that you're not alone in that.
Yeah.
And like you say, kind of having the organization in your corner, having somebody behind you saying you're not on your own, you have support, your issue is important and we want to help you. I think that's really, really positive.
Yes, and I think what's really unique about Women of Zimbabwe was the meeting with the Home Office, because the Home Office don't meet people. They don't
Yeah.
like to talk to communities. They don't like to talk to organizations. It's like a war zone with the Home Office, and the fact that we're able to do it, and we are just a tiny little organization, meant a lot to the women. They felt very supported, and they still do. So we've got women who've had their visas. They're still in the group. So we've got an alumni group for the women that have had their visas, and then we've got the women that are still waiting 3 years on to get their child to come. And I sometimes find it emotionally. I'm caught up in the emotions of the moms, because I can't imagine being separated from my child for 3 years, who I left when they were 2 years old, or I left when they were four, or left when they were 12, and they're now a teenager, and there's no mom to talk to. And, when we talk about the girls who were left at 9, and 2 years later, those girls have matured. And then we talk about periods. I think it's important to talk about the periods as well as part of this. And those girls have started their periods. There's no mom to talk to teach them what they need to do. They've gone to school, and maybe someone at school, a teacher, has taught them what they need to do. They're living with an elderly grandparent, or they're living with, family members who are not really bothered about it. So nobody's really teaching them when they come into that sort of thing. So it's all those issues and challenges. And then they're telling their mom on a WhatsApp call, and they're crying because there's no one that they can share what they're really going through on a day-to-day basis. So it's those types of stories that, we want the Home Office to want to continue feeding to the Home Office so they can understand the trauma, and that they're able to do the right thing, but just allowing them to come and be with the parent who has the sole responsibility for them.
That's right. It's such a sensitive time, and such a stressful time to be a young girl starting to menstruate, not knowing what to do, feeling different, feeling vulnerable. So
Yes.
it very touching to hear of specific examples of how that has how that has impacted certain families. I think the way that you the way that the report, but also your meetings with the Home Office and your work overall can share those personal stories, I think is
Yes, yeah.
so valuable, so important. Um, it's interesting how you highlight that not many community groups or not many organisations manage to get that time talking with the Home Office, working with the Home Office. So I think that as well is a real demonstration of uh, the the passion and the intent behind the organisation, behind
Mhm.
Women of Zimbabwe, because you've made really important steps for so many people. But yeah, it's still very infuriating to hear about people waiting for so long, so long.
It is. It is.
Hmm. Hmm. So I wanted to ask this: the work that you're doing is so important, and that particular um, the particular need that your organisation sprung from of the visa processes for dependents is so important. Do you think there are other areas of policy or other specific changes that the government could make that would make the experiences of your members better, to make their lives, their working lives, their family lives better in the UK?
Um, I think so. I guess one of the things which is touching on the care workers is just making the process simpler, just makes everything so much easier for the families here and for the families back home. If they can be assured, because it's a small group, it's a very small group of people now that are left, of mums and maybe 3 or 4 dads to bring their children in. Um, the other one we've talked about is the cultural sensitivity, is ensuring that the services are culturally sensitive and inclusive, and recognizing the diverse backgrounds of migrant workers. I think that is so important, and that can only come through training of the caseworkers. But I think that the whole of home office needs this cultural sensitivity training. One of the things I did, this is many years ago in a different job, we did some training for the home office around culture. And so I think it's something that can be done. Women of Zimbabwe have the skills to do cultural sensitive training. So I think, and I think this is one is key, is quite important. That's why we wanted to be part and parcel of the review of the new guidance for visa applications, that we could stress on the training, and so we need to follow that up. Um, what else is it that the Home Office can do? Um, I'm just thinking. I think collaborating with people like us is also important. Collaborating with NGOs, so these non-governmental organizations, is important. Making their policies easy to understand, because this is where the challenge is. They give you a policy, they give you their process, and you think and feel that you have done it, you've understood it, but actually it's complex. So they need to simplify those processes. And then the other bit is education and awareness. I know that the Home Office do that. They do some areas of education and awareness with the communities, but those education and awareness are usually around getting people to leave the country. So rather than doing those education and awareness for people that want to leave the country, or people they are trying to educate to leave Britain, why can't they do education and an awareness to help people settle that are already here? So that would be a good one outside of this type of work, is that, you've come into the country, how can we help you settle? What do you need to know? And then signpost those people to resources. They do have a department that is dedicated to educating people to return back home.
I didn't know that, and I'm quite shocked by that actually. Um, to think that's being the priority and that's the stress of the, and that there's specific training for that. I think it's quite shocking that they're looking at it that way round. You would think it would be important for people to receive, yeah, information, support in how to um, improve life here for themselves and for others. I
Yeah,
think you're so right there, and I am shocked to hear that there's specific training for leaving, preparing you to leave. I think that's really sad.
yeah, they
Um,
do. She actually approached me, and at one point I'd said yes. Then I did, reflected, and I thought, why would I bring you into to discuss to them to tell people that if you want to leave, we can help you. So yeah, there is a specific department that deals with that. So we would like to see
Gosh.
people, integrating and settling. I suppose that's
Mm.
another piece of work that Women of Zimbabwe do in terms of the integration, of when the moms come in because they find it difficult to navigate their way around organizing childcare when their children have come, organizing childcare, schools, understanding the culture, and supporting their own children so that their own children have confidence in schools and making friends. So that's another piece of work that is can grow in its own way with funding. Of course, if there is funding, then Women of Zimbabwe can grow that area because it's needed. But the Home Office could equally do
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They should have that responsibility to make life flow more easily for people that have come to work here. I think what you said as well about how policies could be made easier to understand, I think is really important, because it does feel like they're written for other people who write policies. They're always very confusing, and there's a lot to be left to a grey area that people can get confused by. And it reminded me something you said right at the beginning of the session, about how you have guided people in how to go through the gov.uk website, for example, go through the steps or find the right information. Uh, and I think that's another example of something that should be written in a user friendly way. That sort of resource should be accessible, because otherwise it's a first barrier before you even begin. If you don't understand the process, you're you're kind of a step behind already.
Yeah, yes, you are, because they do have a welcome pack. So as part of that welcome pack, they can have a one sheet with links on it where people can just click in, to for help. And then as part of that, they can have organizations that are trusted to which the women can go to if they need any help, when they come into the country. Because they told me that when they were coming in the country, they were given a pack, and as part of that pack, they were given, I don't know if they give them anymore, but they had, a SIM card. I think for £10, so that they could make phone calls. I don't think they do that anymore, but they could have this type of information for where the women can go to go and get help, and how they can integrate in their communities, because a lot of them have questions because they don't know, and they often are living and working in remote areas where there is nobody that looks like them, and so they don't know where to go, to get help and information if they need it.
No, that's so right. And I think, yeah, something as simple as a SIM card is a really important thing to have to help you make connections or help you make your way right at the beginning of your time here. Yeah, I think that's something that should definitely be built on to make it more, well, to make things more welcoming.
Yeah,
Although unfortunately it's not the kind of message at the moment.
no, it's not. The kind of message at the moment is, don't come.
That's it. That's
There's
it.
more people, because I looked at the stats as I mentioned earlier, um, and a lot of the migration is just not healthcare workers. It's just a minority. The healthcare workers are a minority. because what they did a few years ago, was it 2 years ago, was that they stopped the students from bringing their families. And so that cut out. Again, I think that's a minority. I think
Mm.
there's other types of migration that they probably need to be looking at, and not targeting a small minority of individuals coming to work in an area that is very important, supporting vulnerable citizens of the UK.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. A group that's so important to how society here
Yeah.
works. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Is there anything else that the organisation does that you would like to highlight? Any other experiences of your members that you would like to highlight?
I think for the moms that are still waiting and the dads that are still waiting, it's the challenges having to work. Some of them work with children, and so they're going to work with children, and their own children are back home. So it's that emotional toll that is taking on them. And then, we are supporting, having to signpost them to help, because we don't have the expertise to be able to support the moms um, in that regard, in their emotional and mental well-being. So that's another piece of work that others can do to help them. Um,
Gosh,
and
that's
and
yeah something that I wouldn't have even considered, the impact of helping other children and being around other children, growing to care about other children, and knowing that your child is waiting with a family member, or yeah, that must be really, really challenging.
yeah, it's really challenging. And so the other work that I already mentioned is that those that have turned 18, so the 18-year-olds and over, which is going to be a new project that we'll be embarking on. And then the advocacy, the continued advocacy for the mums and the few dads who've been here for 2 years plus and still don't have their children. And the policy area, making sure that the policy is understood and is clear, and also the training on the cultural sensitivity. So those are the areas that we are working on and continuing to advocate for. And so we hope that, in the next year, that every mom, dad who wants their child to come will have come into the country. Because what we are seeing is that people are leaving and going to work in other countries, or returning back to their home country to be with their children.
Yeah, I think it's so important to maintain that focus of the people that you're trying to support, and how things can be made better for them, how you can support their processes. Um, but yeah, it sounds like you've got really important work to come as well with the
Yes.
new kind of focuses that you've got. Um, that's all my kind of prepared questions. I think we've had a really good discussion, and it's been useful for me as well to get a bit more in depth in some of the issues. Okay, thank you so much, Patricia, for joining us. It's been so interesting and encouraging to hear about your work and the progress the organisation is making, but also an important reminder of the challenges that your members are still facing, and the changes that we need to see to make their situations better. Yeah, good luck with everything going forward, and thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you very much for having me. And we will continue the conversation because the work is ongoing. So thank you so much.